Welcome to No Place to Call Home, a St Petrocs podcast. This podcast is led by residents of St Petrocs to raise awareness and break stereotypes of homelessness. Some of the content discussed may be distressing for some listeners. Listener discretion advised.
Hi, I'm Natalie. This episode is called From Crisis to Care and is the first of a series of topics where we will be interviewing staff and their experiences of the work they do within their roles. Today, we will be talking to Sofia. Great to have everybody back again. Really happy that we're back for episode 2. So much has happened since our last one. Like, we were able to get onto the BBC, which was an incredible thing. There's been so much happened since the last one, and it's really great to be back again. So today we are meeting a lovely lady called Sofia. Hi, Sofia.
Hiya.
Hi, she's one of our outreach workers. So, Sofia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're quite welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. So if you could describe to us, what does outreach worker mean?
So what an outreach worker means is we go out to people in our communities who are struggling, and that could be with homelessness or with other issues, but in my case, definitely homelessness. We go out to people who are struggling, meet them in the community and try and engage them in some support. And this is for people who wouldn't be able to travel to our resource centres because of their circumstances. So yeah, I go out and I see people in a range of different circumstances, in their cars, in tents, hidden homelessness, at drop-ins, at churches. So I bring St Petrocs service out to them.
That's amazing. That sounds like such a fulfilling job, to really see people on potentially their worst days, to really hopefully getting them to some brighter days. If you could describe to us, what does a typical day look like for you?
What I love about outreach is that every day is different. It can be unpredictable and at times chaotic. But a typical day would be, so I'd start the day, I turn my phone on in the morning, and that very much dictates where I go for the day. So I could have new referrals that have come in through our resource centres or through referral forms, or I could have voicemails and text messages from clients in distress asking to see me for the day. So that kind of helps me map out where I'm going to be and what towns I'm going to go in. I have a patch, so I cover a certain area of Cornwall. So after I've done, the original contacts in the morning, checking emails, checking referrals and things like that, I tend to base myself down at a drop-in. That could be at a church, at a community centre, or somewhere like the Salvation Army. I have people come and see me there who are accessing other supports from these places. So that could be things like a hot meal, it could be seeing the GP, it could be using washing facilities. So I see people at this drop-in and try and help them in any way that they need. So that could be doing housing referrals, that could be doing a referral for a food bank voucher, it could be making referrals into mental health or health services. After the drop-in's done, I normally tend to go for what I call a walkabout in the town that I'm in for the day. So I'll be seeing people that didn't make it to the drop-in, or I'll be going to new reports of rough sleepers or people experiencing homelessness. And I tend to go and check out sites where I know people have unfortunately had to rough sleep in the past. So common areas where I may be likely to find a tent. So that could be a part of woodland, it could be a bit of a park or something like that.
What are some of the different situations that you find people in? So we know about some of the more common ones, as you've said, which is people who are sleeping in cars, maybe in the woods. But as Shane said on the last podcast, which is that we never really see what we call, what unfortunately society calls the invisibles, which is a horrible name for it. The people who are necessarily have just taken themselves away to feel a bit safer. What are some of the situations like that you'd say that people tend to try and do?
So there is an awful lot of hidden homelessness. And what I mean by that is people who aren't normally visible to us. So you wouldn't see them bedding down on the street. You wouldn't see them in a tent or in a park. These are people who have never had a secure tenancy of their own. They could be staying with various friends and family members, sofa surfing, going from place to place to place to place. So I meet people who quite often have 4 different sofas to stay on in the week, and every day is a scramble to try figure out somewhere else safe to stay. I also meet people who are incredibly distrustful of services because they have been let down so badly in the past that to lead them into homelessness, and they feel safer away from communities in more rural areas, hard to reach areas. But what one of the biggest surprises in joining this role was how hidden in plain sight some people are. People who are bedding down outside, very, very close to, the main road, or very close to a park, or very close to a train station. You wouldn't see them there unless you were looking. And I think that's obviously by design. They want to be close to town centres for support, because some people are in these situations and still working, but equally they don't want to be visible, because being visible places them more at risk. So I meet people in a variety of situations. There is no one stereotype that I can talk about. I've met people who are holding down jobs, living in their cars, living in tents, going from place to place. I've met people who work night shifts so that they have somewhere warm and dry and safe to be at night, albeit at work. I've met people who get gym and hotel memberships to use the facilities there, like the showers, the other equipment, gym equipment, just so they've got somewhere to be. So people are very, very creative in how they manage and cope with homelessness, but that can also be a barrier to people knowing where and how to access support as well.
That sounds like it must have such a big effect on people, which, to be fair, I think is completely understandable if you're going through such a difficult situation. What do you find the effects on people's mental and physical health can be?
I think homelessness can be absolutely devastating for people's mental and physical health. We know that mental and physical health are really interlinked, but, when you are worrying about getting your basic needs met, so where to sleep for the night, where to charge your phone, where to get food, you're running on adrenaline all the time, and that adrenaline can really make people feel physically very unwell. And that's just a person with no pre-existing mental or physical health conditions. For those members of our community who have got long-term illnesses or health conditions or mental health conditions, it can that can really, really deteriorate. In terms of mental health, those feelings of hopelessness, those feelings of stress, not sleeping, that can really exacerbate pre-existing mental health conditions, and also it can understandably lead to people feeling anxious and depressed, with their current situation. And in terms of physical health, the effect on homelessness on physical health can be absolutely devastating. Stress does a number to all of us. Yes. I've met individuals who get such severe flare-ups of eczema because they're not sleeping, because they're going from hot to cold. They're in very dire situations, and that skin eczema is flaring up. I've met people who whose bodies just seem to, shut down because of the long-term impacts of rough sleeping. For example, there was one lady who was in her car sleeping, and she was sat bolt upright and her legs had swollen. And this was a lady that had no pre-existing health conditions before that. So, long-term homelessness, be that hidden homelessness or the more visible kinds, can really have a big impact on people.
I completely agree with you. I think unless you've really had to live in that fight or flight mode, almost what I'd call survival mode, which is going from day to day to day, that level of stress on your body can have such a detrimental physical effect. Yeah. And that can be long term, even if you've rehabilitated yourself from living like that for such a long time, can really have such an effect on your body.
Absolutely.
Which is just so sad. Yeah. Which is, again, though, why we're so happy that there are wonderful people like you in the world, and to hopefully be working to be able to end homelessness. So, on a more positive note, what do you genuinely love most about your job, and what motivates you every day to go to work in the morning?
What I love about my job is every day is different, but what I absolutely love about my job is I can make a big difference to somebody's life by doing something that is seemingly so small. So I could meet somebody and say, can I get you a cup of coffee? Have you had a hot meal today? And I might not be able to solve the bigger problems going on in their life. I wish I could magic up a bed space for somebody there and then and get them off the streets. But those little things, like making sure somebody's basic needs are met, that they've had something hot to eat and drink, the satisfaction from that is unreal, and because that makes such a huge difference to how that person is feeling in that moment, and how well equipped they are to go on and face the rest of their very, very challenging day. So yeah.
I mean, we're British. We know what a difference a good cup of tea can make to your day.
Absolutely.
So we're turning the tables a bit now, because normally I'm the person that asks all of the questions, and now you get to quiz me.
Yeah. So, Natalie, I understand you have been in St Petrocs accommodation and you have experienced homelessness, unfortunately, in your life. Would you like to tell us a bit about, what, if you're able to, what happened to lead you into homelessness and how you came across St Petrocs?
Okay, so I'll start by saying I've actually fortunately enough, just been able to leave St Petrocs. I was able to move out last Friday, which was really nice.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It feels very strange. It feels like I'm currently living in almost like a holiday home, like it's not quite real quite yet, because the amount that I think if you'd gone through the amount that I'd gone through to be able to get there, it's like, seriously, this is actually happening. But right, so to start with, I would say I've been made homeless 3 times in my life. 2 was to do with due to domestic abuse, and the other was to do with a life-changing injury, which still affects me now. And I'd gone from being a fiercely independent person to having somebody literally have to help me shower. So my mental health was in the floor.
It must have been so difficult.
It was incredibly difficult. I will always say, though, if it weren't for him, I wouldn't be able to walk. I just wouldn't be able to. I had very little help at the time, very little physio help. There wasn't exactly, I don't know if it was just where I was living. It might have just been, unfortunately, to do with my age as well. When people find out what I'd had, they'd said it would have been just easier if I'd have broken my leg, because the amount of existing damage still. But so due to him, I'd had to leave. I think it's different with any relationship, healthy or otherwise. If it's ending and you live together, one of you kind of knows one of you's going to have to move. But this came quite suddenly, especially with a life-changing injury. God, if you'd have told me the week before I was going to be made homeless in less than a month because of a life-changing injury, I would have thought that you'd gone insane, because I was right at the top of my game. When you've gone from having all of that to literally everything stripped away from you in a month, because I lost my house, I lost my job, I lost my employability, because it sounds awful, but I'd gone from being headhunted twice a day to people who wouldn't even look at me twice because I had a walking stick, and nothing in my brain was completely fine. I was still able to do jobs incredibly competently. I just needed a walking stick to get around now, and that was the only thing that changed. And I could tell the difference of people, because they would try and hire me over the phone, take one look at me as soon as I got into a physical interview, take one look at my walking stick, and start making all the excuses I would make when I knew I wasn't going to hire someone.
It can happen to anybody incredibly quickly,
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed on outreach. I meet people who have, like yourselves, had very normal, in quotation mark, lives, and then within a month everything's been turned on its head.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, goodness, it was a lot of stuff. But to sort of cut a longer story short, I will always say to anyone, because of what happened to me, it literally happened to anyone. But then you quickly learned that happiness starts with gratitude. You can find the light even in the darkest of places. You just really have to look for it. So just to me, even though it was the worst time of my life so far, I would always say, do you know what? I was fortunate enough that on the day that I'd actually left him, was that St Petrocs happened to be at a place called Storehouse, which I very much believe everything happens for a reason. I think they were there for that reason. It was definitely a sign. I was fortunate enough that my best friend let me sleep on her floor for 2 weeks before I was, because again, like you said about sofa surfing, that was literally me. That was, I was shocked to say the least. I was very hesitant when I came to St Petrocs, because I wasn't, after a lot of stuff, I wasn't really used to people helping me that much. I'd had a lot of, oh yeah, but we'll help you, but you have to do it all by yourself. That was my state of life for about 3 years because of this. So I came to them and I probably cried at them for the best part of 3 hours, which the lady who's just helped me move out was the person who I cried at for 3 hours. And I was like, this is very full circle, because I would always say to her, I probably met her on one of the worst days of my life, and now she gets to see me getting back to some brighter futures ahead, hopefully. But yeah, the thing that I would always say to people is never discriminate against anyone, because that could be you next week. You could be that person in the wheelchair. You could be that person who's struggling with their mental health. You could be that person that is all of a sudden the world's falling out from beneath you. There's a phrase that I quite like, which is always be kind to everyone on the way up, because you'll never know who you'll meet on the way back down. Like, just kindness costs nothing. It really costs nothing.
So when you came to St Petrocs at store drop-in, how did things change for you from there?
To start with, they'd actually really validated how I was feeling, which not a lot of people had done, because obviously not everyone really saw what was happening to me. They really let me get it all out to start with. They gave me a hot drink, which when you're having a bad day really can make a difference. They helped me get counselling, which I didn't even have to leave my house for, because the counsellor came there, because that's where I felt safer. They gave me a roof above my head with a working kitchen. I hadn't realistically had a working kitchen for about 2 months by that point, so I was actually able to eat real food. They really helped me on the process of moving out and getting my life back together, and they were kind of there when you really needed them. And I mean, that's everyone from the outreach workers to the people who work in the houses to the people who help rehabilitate you. They cover everything, and you're not really alone with anything, which is really quite nice.
So good to hear.
Yeah.
It sounds like it really did make a huge difference for you, and now you've moved on into your own accommodation.
I think one of the best things I could ever say about the staff is they talk to you like an adult and a human being. I find a lot of people, when you're in quite a difficult situation, they'll talk to you in almost like that baby voice, like they're talking to you like, oh, that's happened. Whereas they just say, actually, this is what's happening. Here's how we're going to help. Here's the realistic options of how we're going to get you back on your feet again. And even if they've got a full day, if you're having a bad day, they will always be there and listen to you and still talk to you like that adult, which that amount of respect, I can't tell you how invaluable that was or is. Okay, so we're going to open it up to the rest of the room now, so we can say hi to everybody in the room. Hello.
Hi, I'm Shane.
Hi, I'm Pip.
So for those of you who don't know, we've discussed it a little bit on the pod. What is Storehouse, Shane?
Okay, so Storehouse is a safe hub really for vulnerable people, vulnerable adults, young people, where we distribute food, a thing called community kitchen. So it's basically we get donated lots of lovely food. From places like Waitrose, Marks and Spencer's. It's very posh. Poshest food bank in the country, I'd say. and in the winter time, it's a warm hub where people just come in and sort of meet people, make friends, and it's a great resource to our local area. Really, it brings a lot of people together, and yeah, I've really enjoyed volunteering there for the last 3 years. It's nice serving the community, providing meals, hot food and stuff when they're open. So yeah, it's a great thing. It's a great place.
I would also say the Storehouse is where I ran into St Petrocs, which was really great. Honestly, they had so much help there. It wasn't just one person by themselves. They were just like, okay, so we've got this person and this is how we're going to send you on to the next person, whilst being able to get like a hot drink whilst you were there, and whatever help you needed is quite a wonderful place. So to open the discussion up, let's give you some statistics and then talk about that. So last year, 23% of the people in St Petrocs supported were women. What is it like for women to access support when they're experiencing homelessness, and what challenges do they face? Pip, if we're all right to put that question to you first.
Yeah, from the point of view of a female, I guess it's just maybe just that sort of like element of vulnerability, possibly. In no way do I decry the male aspect of it at all.
I was going to say as well, about 23% of people St Petrocs supported women. I agree. I think that figure is very low, and I don't think it's representative of the amount of women that are facing homelessness and rough sleeping. I know that there was recently a rough sleeping census that St Petrocs participated in, and I think the figures for that would be online soon. But what it found was that women's experience of homelessness and accessing services is different to men. So women are less likely, according to these statistics, to rough sleep and be visible. Women are more likely to sofa surf or be insecurely housed in more unsafe options. So it could be, staying with somebody who's offered a room, but they might not necessarily be a safe person. It could be moving from place to place to place, sofa surfing, and things like that. So I wonder if that is part of it. I mean, some of that is the male experience of homelessness too. But I definitely think it's interesting. So, I mean, from an outreach perspective, I meet an equal number of men and women, but looking at that figure, I obviously don't. But I meet more men that are rough sleeping for definite.
We've kind of just touched on this, but it does lead us neatly into the next question. So what about minority groups and people with disabilities? Do they face any particular challenges, and how does St Petrocs support them? I think, Sophia, you're a good person to ask about this.
Absolutely. I would say that minority groups and people with disabilities do struggle and face challenges in accessing homelessness support. So thinking about members of the LGBTQ community, trans people, for trans individuals that I've met particularly, it can be a barrier for accessing support in terms of having to disclose identity or getting to the point of actually getting help. A lot of our drop-ins are with religious and faith groups, and that can be a barrier for people. Some people have experienced religious trauma. I've met people who have left certain faiths or been excommunicated from them, and that can be very, very tricky to then step back into that arena. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to speak for all minority groups and all people with disabilities, but in terms of how St Petrocs supports them, I would like to think that we treat everybody with dignity and respect, and we treat everybody as an individual. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Well, yeah, I think any serious mental health condition is, unpleasant. I just think, it just makes life that extra bit more difficult, really. Nothing straightforward. No one said it's going to be easy, but there's a lot of complexities, I guess.
Oh, yes, to say the least.
What you guys were talking about, it kind of jogged my thinking, made me reflect a little bit what you said about trying to get people to understand. And we will touch on this a bit more later on, but in terms of minority groups and people with disabilities and trying to make people understand, a big barrier to accessing support is advocating your own needs to the local authority, to be able to be considered for priority need, to be able to be offered emergency accommodation so that people don't find themselves insecurely housed, sofa surfing, rough sleeping, going from awful situation to awful situation. I think that can be one of the biggest challenges, having to gather all of those receipts to say, no, this is why I'm vulnerable, this is my health condition, this is why you need to take this seriously. That is a big challenge.
It's huge.
Especially because of what you've all been discussing about perceptions of disabilities and perceptions of mental health and the prejudices that unfortunately are baked into society,
I would say when people hear the word disability, I still think the first thing you think of is physical, whereas mental can easily lead on to physical as easy as butter goes onto a knife. Okay, so neatly onto our next question. In a recent survey done by St Petrocs, they found the 5 main causes of homelessness in 2025 is number 1 is relationship breakdown. Number 2 is friends and family can no longer accommodate. 3, loss of rented accommodation. That could be due to things like Section 21s, which are no-fault evictions, things like that. Number 4 is mental health, and number 5 is violence, and which causes fleeing. well-being. To open it up to the entire room, why do you think people end up experiencing homelessness, and what are some of the biggest reasons behind it?
I think relationship breakups, that's certainly my situation. And I think people sometimes forget, that not everybody has a safety net. I always said, before, I think if you've got an extended family, you might not necessarily get on with them very well, but that's potentially your safety net if everything goes wrong and goes south. So I didn't have any of those luxuries really, and they really are luxuries because if you need some help, they're probably the guys who would throw you a rope, throw you a lifeline. And mental health stuff as well. I mean, there's just so much stigma around things like that there. It's very difficult.
Pip, what about you? What do you think? Why does some people experience homelessness, and what do you feel some of the bigger reasons are?
Well, it's encapsulated over those 5. Yeah. My personal situation was a relationship breakdown. None of this is news. All of this is, it's the inconvenient truth, isn't it? And it's not going away. So how about we kind of are getting more and more aware of it, but how about what sort of allocation, what kind of changes can be made in society to accommodate things not getting as bad as they really do get for a lot of people some of the time?
I mean, I completely understand. Like, I would say at least 3 of those I've experienced and what caused homelessness for me. Like, I just... Sofia, what about you? What do you feel? Do you feel that they're relevant? Do you feel they're correct as those 5 main causes?
The main category of people I meet that have come into homelessness, they have suffered a relationship breakdown with being like the primary cause. So people maybe not being on the tenancy or staying with other half's friends and family. They split up, you're on your bike, you're on your own kind of thing. But I think what you were saying about the safety net, that is 100% true. And that kind of leads on to number 2. So friends and family cannot accommodate that group of people that they've gone to their safety net, they've been with their safety net, the safety net's been putting them up for a really long time, but we all have unfortunately limits on how much we can do, personally, like financially or otherwise. I meet an awful lot of people whose family members would love to have them in, but they're putting their own tenancy at risk. Or people who would love to have them, but they're in temporary accommodation themselves, so they can't have anybody else in. But I would say relationship breakdown, family not being able to put them up, loss of rented accommodation, mental health, violence. Absolutely, all of those are. I've met somebody that's experienced like each of them, individually and a combination of the 2, or 5 even in some cases.
No, I completely agree. If we can put it out to both of the residents in the room, what does the word home mean to you?
Security, safety, happiness, trying to be happy, and normal, whatever normal looks like. That's all I want really from being housed. Just to have my own front door. I can see people if I need to see people, and if I want solitude, which I really need, it's there, and I choose to take that a lot of the time. So yeah, bit of both. Bit of everything.
Completely relate to you on that. I think that's relatable to quite a lot of people. Yeah. Pip, how about you? What does the word home mean to you?
Peace of mind.
Oh, wow. I really like that you took time to think about that. I think that makes it quite impactful. For me, I'd say, what's the word home mean? I'd say warmth, safety, a locked front door, lockable doors everywhere, and I would say the control of your own space. I think one, from my personal perspective, after being in situations where you don't really feel a great deal of control, having control over one aspect of your life, which is your own space, makes such a difference. Such a difference. Where you can watch what you want on television, where you can cook whatever you fancy. Just having things in the house or not having things that make you feel safer makes such a difference. And just to lock the world away is sometimes quite a nice feeling.
Thank you for joining us with our Crisis to Care episode of our St Petrocs residents-led podcast and supporting us in the journey to spread the word, changing people's perception of people experiencing homelessness. Subscribe to our channels to hear about future episodes of the podcast.
Yay! High five, Shane.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was produced by Newlyn Art Gallery and the Exchange's digital production services.